You know, one of the things that's been driving me nuts about Trump's congressional speech is this phrase that he looked presidential. I have not watched the speech myself, but I will tell you right now, I hate the phrase presidential. And the reason I hate the phrase presidential because it always seems to be kind of a good excuse to not actually look at what the man said. Every time I hear somebody say, you know, I really think he looked presidential, I hear in my head, yeah, he proposed that he was going to kill 15 people, but man, he looked presidential doing it. Obviously, I'm being facetious, but you get my point. Who cares if the man looks presidential or not? However, somebody decided not to be outdone by Trump, and that somebody was Bernie Sanders. He actually posted a response to Trump's speech. That response went about as you would expect. So I thought we'd take a look at his response as well. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Gary Varner. This is Renegade Reason, and today we're reacting to Bernie Sanders' response. So let's get into it. Now, to be fair, as far as reactions from liberal politicians in the media goes, this reaction was actually pretty fair. I mean, it was mild. I mean, I thought Bernie Sanders did, you know, overall a good job. I thought his responses were succinct and well thought out. Not that I agree with them, but I just felt like he was articulate and didn't fall into some of the usual pitfalls that the media and these Democrats tend to do, and that is trying to paint Trump up like an idiot or act like it's the end of the world or something like that. However, I did think there were some things that needed to be addressed, so we're going to take a look at those right now.
At a time when over half of older Americans have no retirement savings, I did not hear President Trump say one word, not one word, about Social Security or Medicare. During the campaign, as we all remember, President Trump promised over and over and over again that he would not cut Social Security, Medicare, or Medicaid. It was a cornerstone of his campaign. But in his first address to the nation, he didn't even mention Social Security or Medicare once, not a single time. Even worse, President Trump has proposed a massive cut to Medicaid, massive cut, threatening the nursing home care of millions of senior citizens and the health care of many, many of our children. I did not hear President Trump say one word, not one word, about the need to lower the cost of college and to do what countries all over the world are doing, and that is to make public colleges and universities tuition-free. It's an enormously important issue, impacting millions of families throughout this country.
I don't know if Trump actually is planning on cutting Social Security or not. I have no idea. I know he's planning on making cuts to Medicaid, and that would be through repealing and replacing Obamacare and all of that. Here's the thing, though, guys. There were going to be cuts anyway. There's no avoiding the fact that cuts are going to happen, regardless of who's in office. If the Democrats kept getting in office, it would take longer, but sooner or later, a Democrat would have to make cuts to these programs. It's just, it has to happen. We are $19 trillion in debt. That's a pretty big number that is not sustainable. Cuts were coming down the pike sooner or later. It does not matter. It didn't matter who was in office. Social Security has been teetering on the edge of bankruptcy for years anyway. I mean, guys my age are probably never going to see their Social Security check, ever. It's not going to happen. We will never get that money back, regardless. A lot of these programs, these welfare programs, these Social Security programs, these programs that are meant to help the downtrodden, they're living on borrowed time. We just don't have the money. That's not a sympathy thing. That's not a we're cruel and we don't think you should have that money thing. That's just a practical thing. Countries cannot just continue to print money and expect nothing bad to happen. That's an impossibility. Sooner or later, the bottom will fall out of it, and cuts are going to happen in order to prevent that bottom from falling out. And as far as college goes, the whole reason that college is so expensive in the first place is because government is helping out. The universities know that they can charge more for books and classes and tuition because the government is helping students pay for it. Plus, they're a nonprofit, so they don't have to compete with other colleges to give students a better deal. And whenever you have a situation where these different entities are not competing, prices are going to skyrocket. It's the same thing with a monopoly. You have to have competition to keep prices down. And so the government has been involved in that for years anyway. And of course, lo and behold, the second the government got involved, the prices skyrocketed. And if you have the government get more involved, it's just going to be more of the same thing. This is not a problem the government can fix. And again, there's a question of how you would pay for that nobody seems to want to talk about.
Not only did President Trump not mention the issue of voter suppression, what Republican governors are doing all over this country to make it harder for people to participate in our democracy, but the truth of the matter is his administration is now working overtime with Republican governors to make it harder for young people, low-income people, senior citizens, and people of color to vote. That is an outrage. At a time when the scientific community is virtually unanimous in telling us that climate change is real, that it is caused by human activity, that it is already causing devastating problems in our country and all over the world, I did not hear President Trump say one word, not one word, about the need to combat climate change, the greatest environmental threat facing our planet. He pledged to increase our dependency on fossil fuels. Furthermore, at a time when we have more people in jail than any other country on earth, disproportionately African American, Latino, Native American, I did not hear President Trump say one word about how he was going to fix a broken criminal justice system. Yes, we must support the hard work of men and women in the police departments and the sheriff's departments all over this country. But we must end also the disgrace of having more people in jail.
So the thing with the voter suppression deal, that's just silly. If you have a driver's license or a social security card, that is all the ID you're going to need. Yeah, there's probably a portion of the population that doesn't have that. However, in the worst case scenario, you might have to get a card if you're part of that small group. But for the most part, you literally have to give these people something that's in your wallet all the time anyway. It costs you nothing. It has nothing to do with whether you're rich or poor. It's a far cry from some sort of organized oppression. It's just to make sure that you're a citizen when you vote. That is not too much to ask. That's just not an extreme thing. So I think that's just a non-starter issue they're trying to throw out there to get people nervous. But there's really nothing to be nervous about. If you have a driver's license, it will not affect your world in any way. It will literally take you 2 seconds to pull your wallet out. And as far as global warming is concerned, regardless of whether or not global warming is a thing, governments should not be trusted to try and fix it. Look at Solyndra. Look at any company that the government has tried to start up in order to tackle the energy crisis. They have never worked. Governments cannot run businesses. They don't know how. If you believe that the government is the only hope for the world, we are for all intent and purposes screwed. And this fossil fuel thing just amazes me. Oh, sure, it's okay for us to take oil from Saudi Arabia and these countries in the Middle East, but the second we start taking it from our soil, well, then we're damaging the environment and it's the end of the planet. Can we do ourselves a favor and not pretend that Saudi Arabia isn't invested in making sure they have a foothold in the States? Can we at least be honest with ourselves and say, hey, you know what? There's probably some people lining a few pockets that want to make sure Saudi Arabia stays competitive in the United States, and that's what this whole thing with oil is about. Let's just be honest and admit that the environment has nothing to do with that. And as far as the jail thing, I agree. I actually agree. I have no complaints with that. Our jails are entirely too populated. It's because of the war on drugs, which is a giant waste of time, and that just needs to be gotten rid of. It has failed in every capacity of the word. By every definition of the word fail, the war on drugs has failed. So, yeah, I'm actually on board with him there. We need to do something about the jail system. So, that's one on the list that we're in complete agreement about.
President Trump told us that he was going to take on Wall Street and drain the swamp. Remember that? He was going to drain the swamp. Well, the swamp, big time, is now in his administration, which has more millionaires and billionaires than any presidential administration in history. Amazingly enough, for somebody who was going to drain the swamp, who was going to take on Wall Street, his chief economic advisor Gary Cohn, is the former president of Goldman Sachs, one of the major financial institutions that paid billions of dollars in fines for their illegal activity. That's really draining the swamp.
Okay, as far as that goes, I never recall him saying drain the swamp meant make sure we don't have any rich people in Washington. But I have to say I actually agree with him beyond that. I mean, hiring somebody from Goldman Sachs to be on your cabinet is not a good move. I just don't see how it could possibly not paint you up as a corrupt individual. I agree with him. I don't think that was a good move at all.
President Trump told us that we need to invest $1 trillion in our infrastructure, in our crumbling infrastructure, to create millions of new jobs. And you know what? He is absolutely right. That's something that I have been working on for years. But the specifics of the financing plan that he has provided us so far are absolutely wrong. We cannot rebuild our infrastructure by providing billions of dollars in tax breaks to Wall Street and large corporations. President Trump said tonight that he wants to substantially increase funding for the Pentagon. What he didn't say tonight is that he will come up with that $84 billion in increased funding for the Pentagon by slashing programs that benefit the working people of this country, that benefit the elderly, that benefit the children, the sick, and the poor.
A lot of those cuts are going to have to come from social programs, and that stinks. But, well, you know what? Actually, no, it doesn't stink, because the thing that people don't seem to understand is that when you have a government, when you give money to the government, very little of that money actually goes to the people in the society. If you were giving the government $1, I would say, and I'm just throwing a random number out there, but certainly the majority, at least like 80% of that dollar goes to the bureaucracies and the distribution of whatever that program is. Maybe 20 cents actually gets to go to the people who need it. And people don't understand that about the government. So when Trump says he's going to take money from these social programs and put it into the military, which I think we do need a military, and we do need to have the military stronger than it is, and Russia's kind of been strutting around for the last little bit, and we need to show that, you know, we're still strong. We're still in the game, as it were. However, the thing that I need to go back to this whole social programs thing, because people need to understand the government is pocketing some of that money. It's finding elaborate ways to take your money and enrich itself, and it's using these social programs as an excuse. And so when Trump says he's going to cut these programs, he's not literally taking it from some crippled granny and putting it into a nuke or whatever. What he's doing is he's shrinking the size of that bureaucracy. The cuts are going to go into the size of the government, not necessarily into your particular check or not necessarily into your wallet. That might happen in some cases, depending on what program, but the goal is to shrink the size of the government, not take away money from disabled people. And plus, let's just be clear here. People are gaining the system. People are taking advantage of these social programs. And that's not fair to people who are really in need. It's not. And the bureaucracy is so big right now that we don't have a clear way to actually tell who is and isn't sick, because it's just or who is and isn't disabled, because there's just so much paperwork. There's no organization to it. It's a mess right now. However, Bernie does still have a point. You cannot feasibly expect to have $1 trillion in infrastructure spending, increase your spending in the military, and then build a wall on top of all of that, and cut taxes at the same time. That's not feasible. Now, he might come up with some miracle plan to make it up in tariffs or something like that, but I don't see how he can do that. So he does have a valid point. However, you have to remember that what Bernie is proposing is infinitely worse. He wants to have a single-payer option, which Ted Cruz has already established. Even if we took every dime that Microsoft and Apple and other large companies in the world have, it wouldn't pay for the stupid thing for longer than a year. And then, on top of the single-payer option, he wants free college, and he wants all these current social programs that we have. There is no way to pay for it all. And frankly, it's kind of hypocritical for him to criticize Trump for wanting to increase spending in the military and increase spending in infrastructure when there is no feasible. It's not just that he's increasing spending too. It's that the amount of spending it would require is not physically possible. There is not enough money in circulation to make it physically possible. So this is like the ultimate case of the pot calling the kettle black. And that just has to be said.
He also thinks that it is a great idea to provide nearly $3 trillion in tax breaks to the top 1%. Middle class shrinking, 43 million people living in poverty, the rich doing phenomenally well, and Donald Trump wants to provide $3 trillion in tax breaks for the people on top. That is an outrage. Furthermore, President Trump claimed tonight that American corporations pay the highest tax rates in the world. We're going to have to lower substantially tax rates on large corporations. What he said is untrue, not true. According to the Government Accountability Office, one out of five large profitable corporations pays nothing, zero in federal income tax. Today, we are losing $100 billion in revenue every year because corporations are stashing their cash in the Cayman Islands and other offshore tax havens. These corporations don't need a tax cut. They need to start paying their fair share of taxes.
All right, this is the part about Bernie Sanders that makes my skin crawl and why I don't like the guy. Because what is this weird play of words? When he says large corporation, he doesn't mean Apple. He doesn't mean Microsoft. He doesn't mean anything Trump owns. He means small business owners. If you touch more than $520,000 a year, you are a large corporation. You are the 1%, and you are going to get taxed into oblivion. See, because this is the thing about taxes that nobody really likes to talk about. It's not a way to get money from the rich. It is a way to keep you in your social class. The thing about it is it's designed in such a way that you start to taste just a little bit of success. You start to make just a little bit of money, and then the government comes in and goes, no, that's ours. That's ours. That's our money. In fact, when he says we're losing so much revenue a year, it doesn't mean that that money's not in circulation in America and it's going to other countries. It means the government doesn't get it. That's what it boils down to. It doesn't get that money. The government thinks of your money as its money. You are a source of revenue for them. That is how they view you. Bernie's ultimate goal isn't to bring the rich down. It's to keep you from becoming rich. It's to keep you from succeeding. Because the second you reach a threshold, he is just gonna, he'll tax you. His plan is going to tax you into oblivion to make sure you never become the true 1%. It is to keep people where they are, not to create social equality or anything like that. It is to literally keep you down. And that is the ultimate irony to all of this. Everything is designed to make sure that you stay where you are. And that you couldn't close that wage gap even if you wanted to. And that, to me, is just the sickest part about his positions. Overall, though, I have to say that even though I don't agree with Bernie Sanders on his political views, I thought this response was actually very well done. I thought it was very professional. He didn't do what everybody else is doing and just wig out and try to make Trump into an idiot and do a bunch of name calling. He actually lined out his positions, and I felt like he was very articulate and very, for lack of a better term, adult about the matter. And that has been refreshing to see, I'm not going to lie, because with these guys like Seth Meyers and everybody on CNN just absolutely losing their mind, it was nice to see somebody who had an opposing view at least try to act like an adult during all of this. And so, regardless of what I feel about his political opinions, I have to give him that at the very least. So guys, that is all we have for this episode. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked this episode, please like, share, and subscribe, and all of that good stuff. And guys, thank you again so much for your time. I always appreciate it. And until we meet again, see you later.